Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
You heard the big voice guy. It is Nebraska Preps Postgame. It's actually really kind of pre-summer, mid-select AAU type of basketball. Select sounds like such a bad word. We'll go with AAU basketball. My partner, the man, the myth, the legend, Jacob Padilla, joining us. And this week it's a little fun. Well, they're always fun, but it's always fun talking to somebody that's pretty good-natured, that understands all the ins and outs. I did not wear any Westside gear today. I am in my Nebraska Preps post-game zip-up as we talk to the head man at Omaha Westside. Jim Simons joins us this week. Coach, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. I did wear my Westside gear today. You in neutral colors and Jacob sporting his son's gear, I see.
Well, I listen, between Jacob's of his love fest for Phoenix and high school sports, this pretty much epitomizes everything that he's about. He's talking high school hoops, and he's in Phoenix gear, so this got to be in your wheelhouse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty good day. Big win for the Suns last night, pulling that out in overtime, and now we get to talk with Jim Simons.
I tell you, first place in the West, that almost doesn't seem right, does it?
Sure it does.
Long live
exactly right.
Long live Kevin Johnson, Chambers, Sabalos, and Charles Barkley. Hey,
you
Coach.
Don't get the angry Jacob tweets like we got the last couple years when the Suns weren't very good. So
they've got confident coaching. So.
Listen, my favorite, Coach, is when they come at like 2:30 in the morning. Those are like, I'm like, what is he doing besides being mad? He's not happy with the Phoenix Suns right now.
I'm an insomniac, so that tends to happen occasionally.
Par for the course. Coach, so kind of the duality, right? We're just kicking off the summer season, and we're on the heels of the recruiting period coming up for the high schoolers. Man, you just doesn't rest. It doesn't come easy for you kind of living in both worlds. How's it been?
It's been good. I always, the last couple of years, obviously, I haven't coached a summer team, and I enjoy getting to watch. I always joke, I get to go to the gym. Nobody's mad at me about playing time. I'm way less mad at officials than when I'm coaching, and I'm generally in a pretty good mood. I get to watch some good basketball, and like I said, I don't have a whole lot of responsibility, so I enjoy getting to watch our guys play and compete against, obviously, some really, really good competition from all over the place.
Yeah, and see you in the gym all the time. You got so many kids playing on different teams, different organizations. How do you keep track of everybody?
I've got a little notes. What's the notes app on your phone? And if there's a tournament in town like last weekend, I'll usually Wednesday or Thursday try to get them out. And then I've got a little system on my phone and kind of have each of the teams and, try to find some times where they match up in terms of you can get 2 or 3 games at one time is always good. So, but it's a challenge, you want to get out and watch as many of them compete as you can and, try to balance schedules and things like that. But it's fun. I enjoy getting to watch it. There's no question.
Coach, it's kind of cool to be on, I won't say I'm not on the ground floor, but I'm in early enough on your head coaching tenure at Westside. I think it's kind of fascinating, right? Because on the surface, it's this easygoing, you can kind of crack jokes, you got really, you got a good sense of humor. But coaching, man, it's all about detail. You're into rigor, and you rev pretty high. How have you adjusted to kind of overseeing your own program as you kind of balance what goes on with kids coming in and out of the program?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the sense of humor. I don't know if your 15-year-old son or other 15 to 17-year-olds I've got that great of a sense of humor. But, you try to balance it. I mean, obviously, you are who you are, and I'm pretty type A on things that are important to me. I think I've gotten better at being less type A on some things. But, you try to balance it between being who you are, but also, striking a chord in which, you're approachable and you're not revving hot all the time. I mean, which is why I like this time of year. I've said that's one of the things I've enjoyed since I haven't coached an AAU team is I could just go be the guy's biggest supporter and watch him play, and I don't have to critique him. I don't have to be frustrated with, us not finishing around the rim or, a missed defensive rotation. They can maybe see a little bit more of the more relaxed personality. You said during the season, are who you are, and I'm pretty detail oriented. That's just how my brain works, and how we've tried to kind of establish our program. But you want to be able to. There's got to be some enjoyment certainly for the kids, and they got to see you enjoying it. And I was just having a conversation yesterday with Coach Kaminsky actually out of Wayne State, and I said, I'm fortunate. We've got really good kids in our program right now that are talented players, but they're also good kids, and they're super reliable. They're great teammates. They work hard, and I've got to remember that too, and at times not obsess over each and every detail quite as much, and just let them be. So, this is a good time of year to do that.
And you've got a unique perspective as somebody who coached at a high level and then transitioned into having your own high school team and building up your own program. Kind of what's your perspective on that, and seeing how the relationship between summer basketball and high school basketball has grown over the last few years? Because in the past, it seems like that's kind of been an adversarial relationship for some people at different times.
That's right. You get to play in both worlds.
Yeah, it seems like I think that relationship has grown a little bit over the years. What have you seen in that regard?
Yeah, and for me personally, I've just been of the mindset of, if it helps your kids become better players, let's embrace it, and I always kind of use this as an example. When Jaden Booth was playing for us and was on the top Adidas OSA team, and they were playing in New York City and Los Angeles and Atlanta, if I try to battle that, I'm going to lose that battle. Those are some pretty awesome opportunities for Jaden to go compete against some of the best players in the country. And also, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, get a chance to visit New York City, to go to Los Angeles and spend some time on the beach in Los Angeles and go to Atlanta. Those are great experiences for kids. So that's number one. It's just a battle you're not going to win. So let's embrace it and try to figure out how can this be good for Westside basketball and how can this be good for our players. And, to me, your players are exposed to a tremendous level of competition. So you're getting better just by the necessity of the level of competition that you're playing against. Two, we have an understanding of how the recruiting game works. And for kids who have a desire to play in college, that's really important to me. An opportunity to earn a college scholarship and tuition and all those things is super important. And the best way to do it is through those exposure events. I think there used to maybe be a time in the past where high school coaches were hesitant to say that, and that's nothing against the high school game. The high school game's great, but it's also smack dab in the middle of those college coaches' seasons, and they're going to try to get out as much as they can, but they got a lot on their plate in December, January, and February. So the recruiting time for them is during this time. So let's embrace it. It's going to make our kids better, and it's also going to give them opportunities beyond high school. So to me, that's a win-win for the high school program. If your kids are coming back in August, September, and October, and they're better players because of playing against that level of competition, and they've gotten some college opportunities, to me, there's no reason why it should be adversarial. I'm watching, in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, Reggie Thomas going against Keontae George, who I think is one of the top 5 shooting guards in the country. Reggie's pretty good, but that's going to make Reggie a lot better playing against that guy. I think also credit to all the programs here. And I think some sports aren't as good as boys basketball at this, but I think the AAU programs and the high school coaches have a really good understanding here that June is a high school month. There's very few, if any, AAU programs, AAU coaches that are going to kind of encroach upon what's going on in June. Whether it's their strength and conditioning, whether it's their workouts, the skills workouts, whether it's your team camp, whether it's your tournaments. AAU coaches are great. They're going to let them do the high school stuff. And then we know when it comes to July and it gets to those live periods, we scale back what we do high school-wise in July. We're pretty, intense in what we do in June. In July, we're doing twice a week, and we're just doing, a little bit of lifting and a little bit of skills, and giving them the opportunities to spend that time on the weekend playing in their AAU tournaments. And I just think it could be a win-win. And I credit the AAU guys and the high school guys for working together in the best interest of kids. I know in some sports they're getting pulled both directions at the same time. And I think boys basketball has done a good job.
How much of that is a result of kind of the overlap? There's so many, whether assistant, head coaches that do both now. Yeah. You've got a lot of guys on your staff. I know Derek Porter, Bo Schwenka, guys like that have kind of done both, that still help them during the high school year, and then they go out and get to coach their own teams or help with the highest level team. How much is that kind of relationship built and helped with the fact that you've got guys in both worlds throughout and kind of kept that whole thing going from spring into summer into fall?
I think it certainly helps. I mean, there's an understanding, like you said, of both worlds and kind of what the timeline is. And as that makes sense, whether it's, you go back to Doug Woodard and Scott Hawk when they started Crusaders several years ago as two high school coaches. Even today, you've got people, obviously Bob and Mike Mackey do a tremendous job of helping coordinate things with high school coaches, even though they're not coaching in high school. But you've got people like myself, you've got people like Doug, down with Nebraska Supreme with Ryan Reeder and Coach Jacobson. There's just a lot of crossover. And I think a lot of people who are trying to do what's best for kids and understanding there's things that need to happen from a high school perspective in the summer. So your high school team is where it needs to be. But there's also some things that, for the kids' benefit that need to happen on an AAU level.
Coach, I was talking to Lindsey Krause and Chucky Hepburn the other day, and next week it'll be Drew Christo and Hunter Salas. How do you balance Jacob mentioned it, you're in the gym all the time. You have your own individual workouts that you do with your own kids. How fine a line is it for you between repetition and rigor when you're looking at how to manage kind of what these new age high school athletes are doing?
So you're right. You got to be smart about it. So for example, this week we've got a 4-man group that goes Monday mornings on a typical Monday morning. And all 4 of those kids played really high level, really intense, really physical basketball this weekend. I'm watching it Friday night and I'm seeing the physicality of the game. And then I'm kind of going, they've got a couple more Saturday and a couple more Sunday. It is one shooting workout at 6:45 a.m. on Monday morning. Is that worth it for those 4 kids, or would it be better to take the day off, sleep in, show up at school at 8 a.m. when school starts and get away from the game for a day? So on Monday, we canceled.
You had a 15-year-old that was pretty happy about that because he could barely walk.
I think I had several that were pretty happy, And so I think you just have to be smart about, and in my mind, I'm watching those games and I'm kind of going, okay, well, what's the reward benefit of one 45, 50-minute shooting workout? Now, you've got to do them, and that's how you build skill, because obviously I think the AAU game is great for competing and the level of competition you're getting to play against and just getting to play. So we don't do a lot of open gym in the spring in terms of just 5-on-5 open gyms. And some other people do, and, what works for them is what works for them. But my logic is we're fortunate enough to have so many kids who are playing pretty high-level AAU that they're playing 5 or 6 games most weeks, and they're getting a practice or 2 most weeks. We don't need a lot of the open gym, in my opinion. So we try to, with our 4-man workouts, they're 45, 50 minutes. They're entirely skill-based, and they're not something that probably is going to be as difficult on their legs and on their body as maybe what we might do in the fall or obviously during the winter, because we're cognizant of the fact that, they're either coming off a 4 or 5 game weekend or they're maybe getting ready to go on a 4 or 5 game weekend. And, I think you just got to be aware of that. And that was kind of my, I always try to look at during the season too, what are we coming off of, and trying to plan a practice or trying to plan the week, what are we coming off of? And when you look at what the kids were coming off of the past couple weekends, it made sense to kind of back off. But I think the skill component is super important. Obviously, the way we play, we're skill level, shooting, finishing, passing, ball handling is important in our system. So we've got to do those things. But you're right, it's a balance to make sure you're taking care of their bodies and that you're not overdoing it so you're not burning them out. I think the 4 kids that were supposed to go at 6:45 on Monday morning were we're awful excited to have that off. And that was probably a good trade-off, when you look at what do you benefit from one day of a workout.
And got the June period coming up. Kind of what do you hope to get out of that? How do you balance versus what you're doing in terms of live competitions, in terms of summer leagues and tournaments and that type of stuff versus the skill work within yourself? Now you've got to factor in the kind of the live period stuff that teams are allowed to June. Kind of what's your perspective on putting together a June schedule to get everything that you want accomplished?
Good question. And I think it's different every summer. I was really nervous last summer if we were going to get to have a June. Well, we didn't have a June, but we had a July that looked like most Junes do because we were so new at this time last year. We had graduated a tremendous senior class that had played a ton of minutes for us. And I had said to some people, if going into the 2019-2020 season when we had Jaden, Carl, PJ, Chandler, Reggie all coming back, I wasn't as worried about it if maybe we hadn't had a summer. But going into last summer, it was a real concern because we had so many young guys and so many guys that hadn't played together before. So I think each summer, Jacob's different in terms of what does your team need. We're a little more experienced this summer than we were last summer. We return statistically, almost our entire, whether it's minutes, points scored, rebounds, assists, whatever you want to look at. So I think we have maybe less teaching of the big picture to do this summer and more trying to fine tune, some details. Whereas last summer we were really trying to do big picture stuff. And so this summer to me our focus maybe is a little bit more on skills because our kids have a pretty good idea of how we want to play systematically. We're not changing a whole lot in what we're trying to do offensively or defensively, but it's trying to build better players, trying to build better skill. I've found it's always true in coaching. The more skilled or the better your players are, the better your schemes look. So we spend a bunch of time. So we do a 3-day team camp. I think most people do that, not everybody, but we host a 3-day team camp where we try to use that to introduce any newcomers or incoming freshmen to what we're doing, kind of get reacclimated schematically to what we're trying to do, get ourselves organized. And then also try to teach what we want a skill workout to do. After that team camp ends, it really just becomes a heavy basis on skills, strength and conditioning. We've used, First Pick and Grant Eberly all the years that I've been the head coach, and they do a tremendous job. So our focus is going to be, A, get reacquainted with what we want to do schematically, B, really try to improve our skill level, C, try to improve our bodies, through working with Grant. And then D, I don't go crazy. Everybody's different on games. So what we try to do game-wise, we play in the Monday night varsity league that OSA runs with our varsity group. Our JV, we have 2 JV groups. They're going to play in the Tuesday night JV leagues, one in Millard, one in Bellevue. Our incoming freshmen will play in the Bellevue Incoming Freshman League. And then for the varsity group, I try to find one other thing during that week. Whether it's, 1 week on Friday, it's the Papio South Jam. 1 week on Friday, I think it's the Millard North Hoops Fest. We're going to go to Kansas City as a team on one weekend that, I think is good. We tried to do one trip. We didn't last summer for the obvious reasons, but we've been to K-State's team camp, South Dakota's team camp. A couple years ago, we went to Rockford, Illinois when they had the NCAA event there. I just think it's great. One, you get to play different people in the summer, so you're not banging heads with the same people 3-4 times. It allows your team to get away and do some team bonding, some team building stuff, and we've been able to have some good success with that. So we'll do that. And the other thing I've tried to do, which, probably how Damon started it, try to run a little less hot. I think my first summer, we were in like everything. Yeah. Everything. And I've gone to now, the only time we're doing anything on a weekend is the weekend we go to Kansas City. Everything else, if I can do it Monday through Thursday, we're doing it Monday through Thursday. We are in a couple Friday things because that's when those events fall, but they're usually morning, early afternoon. So they're going to have Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday off. And that's I think I've just gotten smarter in terms of not wearing them out. And, it's okay if there's something going on a Saturday that we're not in. So I've got that's kind of my target. Try to play in the league on Monday nights and then 1, 2, 3 game tournament later in the week and repeat that all of June.
You said something earlier that I think kind of we've been talking about. I know I've been talking about it with Mike Sauter a ton. You talked about having good kids in your program, and I know what you're saying, because you're not saying, hey, listen, 6-7 years ago, they were turds. But there's this thing kind of now where, whether it's a Chucky Hepburn, a Drew Christo, a Hunter Salas, a Jordan Ball, they're these high-level athletes that I would actually let babysit my kids. I know you've kind of seen this whole, wow, these are some well-rounded, really good high-end kids. Do you think there's a trick to it? Is there something in the water? Is it something you've noticed? I mean, Caitlin Hanna could be a 3-time or 2-time, 3-time state golfer, and she could watch my daughter, right? Have you seen kind of this evolution of this complete student athlete? And what do you think lends itself to that?
It's a great question. I mean, and for us, it starts with Chandler Meeks and Reggie Thomas. I mean, they'll be our incoming seniors. They've been with us for 4 years. They are awesome kids. They are incredibly hardworking. They're very coachable. They're very reliable. They're really good teammates. They're just great kids. And there's you just don't have to worry about, if it's a 6:45 a.m. workout, they're going to be there at 6:45 a.m. If they're not, it probably means, that there's, something significant has happened. But they're going to be there. You're not watching looking at your watch at 6:42 or 6:43. Are they going to actually show up? I mean, you're there and you don't even really think twice about it. I mean, so it's a huge luxury. And, and I think that the work ethic, the respect for the coaches, the coachability, the respect for teachers and other adults in the building, I do think it's modeled, so where does it come from? I mean, I think if you have kids in your building who are like that in all sports, I mean, it's somewhat modeled behavior. Some of it also is probably we're just maybe fortunate to have a good run of kids, because we've got some kids who have come to us. I'd like to say, we do this, and that, and, poof, they turn out to be awesome kids that are hardworking, that are talented, that are respectful. But we've got a lot of kids who came to us that way, and you try to nurture those things. But it's cool to see.
Good point.
Yeah. And
It is fun to see, and it certainly makes it a lot less stressful on the coaches when you've got good kids like that who buy into what you're trying to do and work hard and treat people the right way.
You mentioned Reggie and Chandler. I'm going to use them as an example for a more general question. 2 years ago, they were really good kind of role players, 4th, 5th options. This year, they had to step into that number 1, number 2 options here with the seniors moving on. What all goes into making that leap from being a really effective player in one role into stepping up into being kind of the main guys for your team and all the challenges, the attention that you get in that role?
There's no question it's difficult. You referenced Reggie and Chandler's year, and we've been, again, fortunate to have had a run of really, really good guard play. And Reggie and Chandler's freshman and sophomore year, they played alongside Jaden Booth and PJ Nagambi, who are both Division I level guards. And game in, game out, PJ and Jaden were getting the other team's best 2 perimeter defenders. Most of the time when the game was in the balance or we really needed a basket, we were playing through PJ or Jaden, or the year before that, Chase. And Chandler and Reggie, their job was to play really good defense, which they did an awesome job of, handle the ball, take good shots, and contribute in that way. It really struck me the first game we played this past summer. I still remember we played Millard West in Papio South. And I talked to Reggie and Chandler the day after. They were trying to be Jaden and PJ. And they're not Jaden and PJ. And PJ and Jaden aren't Reggie and Chandler. They've got different games, different strengths. And I probably hadn't done a very good job. I mean, I was glad it was a summer game because it was a huge wake-up call of, Jaden could do some stuff with the ball that, maybe you don't recommend some other kids do, but Jaden's able to do it. And just having that conversation with Reggie and Chandler of just be you, use enough, use plenty good enough. And your strengths might be different than the guys that we had last year that you played with last year. So play to your strengths as leaders of a team, and other guys, will be able to kind of fill in around you, but your strengths are different than the guys who came before you. So I think that's the number one thing, is to get kids as they make that jump to understand, just be you, use plenty good enough. And then I think the second thing is it becomes a mentality of, number one, trust your teammates, and Jaden and PJ were really good at trusting you guys when you guys were freshmen and sophomores. Now it's your turn to kind of return the favor. There's going to be some games where you're getting guarded by some awful good defenders, and there's a lot of defensive attention on you. And I thought those two became much better as the season went along in that regard. And I think they'll be a lot better next year in it because it'd just be a more comfortable role for them. But I think it's, as much anything, it's mental and just trusting yourself and trusting your abilities. But that's where you talk a little bit about the benefits of the AAU game. Chandler had never played quote unquote point guard for us for 2 years because PJ was our quote unquote point guard. But Chandler was the lead guard, or one of the two lead guards, for his team factory team for those 2 years. And he's playing against really good opponents at the 15s and the 16s level as that lead guard. So I think that helps him tremendously when, now his role changes at the high school level. He's done this before. He's played against really good players playing for Team Factory as the lead guard. You'll see it probably a little bit with Josiah Dotzler at Bellevue West next year. He had kind of a different role the last couple of years playing with Chucky, but he's played a lead guard role as much as, especially when they play the Warriors. I'd like to see Josiah. He's going to be pretty comfortable in that lead guard role because he's done it with his OSA team. So I think that's just another example of where your AAU experience can really help your high school team. Yeah,
I want to stay with that for a second because it's happening right in our very own home, right? I mean, I've got a young guy that plays for you that was probably kind of a spot-up shooter. That's not what he loved to do, but he's gotten better at it. The first thing that he said this summer was, hey, it's good kind of being freed up to being able to return back to the primary decision maker or the lead guard. How do you balance, because you see so much. You see Chandler, you see Reggie, you see Payson, you see Tate, you see all these guys in all these roles. Yet you're firm and have conviction about what you want to do, but you're a lifelong learner. How do you balance seeing what a Mitchell or a Benning or an Oddbody or a Gillespie or a Charlie Davis or Logan Wilson, any of these guys that you watch playing in the gym all the time, Chandler Meeks, versus what is going to be good for your high school team as well?
I think it's, you always have to evolve. I mean, number one, as a high school coach, you have to evolve your systems around what your ability level is and what the strengths of your players are. I mean, so like a great example defensively, my first couple years, we were a pack line defensive team. We did not pressure. We were a gap team. Our depth wasn't maybe where I wanted it to be. And that was, I thought, how we were best equipped to play defensively. And then last year during quarantine in April and May, I'm kind of looking at what we've got coming back and some of our incoming freshmen. And I'm kind of looking down the road and I'm going, this team isn't going to be best suited by being a backline defensive team. We're not taking advantage of our guys' capabilities. And then as I'm watching them, like you said, play in some of AAU stuff, some summer stuff, I'm starting to realize our defensive system is not a great fit for the kids we have. So am I going to be stubborn and say we're going to play defensively the way I want to play? Or am I going to say we're becoming a little deeper than maybe we were a year or two ago? We have maybe a little bit of a different emphasis towards defense. I mean, our best players, PJ and Jaden, were offensive talents, and so now maybe let's make some adjustments. So we completely revamped what we did defensively this year and became probably as good of a defensive team as I've coached with the system that I thought best fit, our talent. And as we look forward, we knew that we're going to have a lot of guys for several years. So I think you got to always be looking at making those tweaks, making those adjustments, and then as you watch kids, I think kids' roles on your high school teams evolve as their abilities and their talents evolve, so as kids are going out and playing against really good 15 and under kids, from, DeMatha High School in Washington, D.C. and, from, really good schools in Dallas, you start going, okay, that kid's skill set is evolving. And now he's not just a 14-year-old that's maybe played, 7th and 8th grade ball. He's played against a really high level. And as your skill set evolves, I think your role evolves and you maybe have to change what you do offensively a little bit. I mean, we have a lot of guards who who have an ability to get downhill and to make good decisions, and that has impacted what we're trying to do offensively in terms of, we're big on double gap, triple gap drives because we have a lot of kids that I think are capable of A, doing some damage in double and triple gaps, and B, they're good decision makers. So I think you're always, as a coach, the more you can see your kids play and see them play in different situations can be really helpful because you see them when they're playing for different coaches and different systems, and you kind of go, okay, they can do this thing pretty well. And I'm watching a couple of our guys last summer, whether it's defensively or offensively, and you're taking those mental notes and you're going, okay, we got to make a few adjustments because they're really talented or skilled in this area, and maybe they're not as skilled in this area of what we were good at in the past. So I think the more you see your kids play and the more they grow, the more you're able to expand. So we'll look different even next year than we did this year because I think we have some kids who their skill set is expanding. Like you said, we're watching it before our own eyes as their skill sets expand. And, so I think we'll look different than we did this year.
Well, a perfect question for a guy that I think is kind of widely renowned or known in his sphere of influence as a guy that can get along with multiple people in multiple areas, right? Like really well liked. Kids are now kind of deciding and picking schools, and they kind of stay together, and it's very competitive. You mentioned Reeder, Mackey, Bob Francis. There has to be kind of this coming together for the goodness of kids, yet you're developing kind of this personal, hey, this is about our school. How cool is it to watch the game grow as you adults take the lead in terms of learning to play nice with one another for the best interests of kids?
Well, and I've always been a play nice, I just think it's what's in the best interest of kids. Matt Tumro called me, 2-3 weeks ago about, their deal. And he said, you guys haven't been down to our deal before. Would you come down? And I was so thankful that Matt gave us that opportunity to go down there and play 2 really, really good games on Friday night. So, to me, we're all in this to help the kids, but, and get along. And you referenced all those guys. Whether it's Bob at OSA or, Mike Mackey was texting me a couple days ago about one of our kids that he's maybe isn't hooked into a summer team yet, but Mike thought he had a good fit for him and was, and that's great. Mike does a great job there. Chandler's having a great experience for Nebraska Supreme. I feel let's all help grow the game. And, you just look at the last few years. Frankly, it's amazing. Saturday, or was it Friday night in Lincoln, you've got Brad Beal and Run GMC in the state of Nebraska playing. Last year at the River Cities, some of the teams we've been able to bring in at the OSA stuff. I even had said, and I hopefully don't have too many Iowa listeners, but when I first started coaching AAU 10 to 12 years ago, we could not beat an Iowa team.
Right.
Whether it was Hoops, Martin Brothers, Barnstormers, it didn't matter. Like if we won one game in the summer against a good Iowa, that was a huge accomplishment. And now, quite honestly, I'm watching a lot of the Nebraska versus, whether it's Supreme, whether it's OSA, Factory, whoever it might be, that is completely flipped. The Nebraska teams are winning significantly more than they're losing. And that's just a credit to the kids in terms of the talent level that's here. And I know you guys have been doing your series, also a credit to the opportunities here in Nebraska for them to improve as players, because it's just the level of talent and the level of opportunities these kids have. It starts with their talent and their abilities, obviously. Chucky Hepburn, there's no amount of coaching or training that was going to make Chucky, he's really good on his own, but I think it starts with the kids' abilities, everybody offering good opportunities for the kids. And, like you mentioned, there's different fits for different kids. So I'm great with them playing for whoever, because you just get along with whoever, and whoever the kids feel is the best opportunity, for them. I've had an association with OSA along with Coach Woodard, but, we both have had kids play for other organizations. And, Chandler's a great example. He's had an awesome experience with that. And that's great. If more people can help kids be better, help basketball in Nebraska, I think that's a good thing.
You good?
Yep.
Fantastic. I always say this, like I like talking to you as much because I know I'm going to learn something just from kind of your style of teaching, man. I appreciate the time. And it's not like you fielded a lot of softballs, man. Those are real questions with real perspective. So I appreciate it, Coach.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for what you guys and obviously a few other folks in the media have done to really help bring a lot more awareness to high school athletics in general and basketball in particular. I think that's been a part of the story as well. So there's not many teams that are covered as well as the Nebraska team. So appreciate you guys doing that.
Coach, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
One of the good ones right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Straight shooter. Gosh, we could have probably gone another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask him about handling the pressure.
I came in wanting to ask him what it's like having to deal with having Damon Benning as a helicopter parent in your program, but we kind of ran out of time there, so I let him off the hook.
He's much better at what he does than what I do, and it's kind of been easy.
Yeah.
Right? To just kind of let it go, and I get to just sit back and watch, but I think he really hit the nail on the head with folks, with the Readers and the Kumros and the Mackeys and the Bob Francises and everybody really coming together for kids. I think it's made a huge difference in the last 4 or 5 years.
And listening to his just overall perspective, it's not hard to see why he's been able to build that program up over the last few years.
Quickly.
And obviously, really good freshman class this past year. Their freshman team went undefeated, and he had your best players all playing JV and varsity too. So you can see why people want to play for him.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and I'm glad you said it before I did. It's his relational skill set that has allowed him to flourish these last couple of years with people wanting to come play for him. He doesn't have to do much. He people think like, well, he says this or he does this or he was that. No, actually, I think the kids just watch him and they like what he's about and they want to know more. They want some of that.
And he's got a great staff, too. I know all those guys that coach under him there. Just added Matt Rubicek, coach of freshman this year, another great guy. He's just got really good people coaching under him that, again, makes that whole deal that much more attractive to kids that are coming in.
I'll tell you what, man, you ever need a schedule, what time, what is, where you're going to be, that's your guy. He's as organized as it gets, and there is no guesswork. It's a peace of mind.
You have to be with as many kids as he's got playing at high level.
Something?
Yeah.
I mean, Logan Wilson, Charlie Davis, Tate Oddbody, Chandler Meeks, Reggie Thomas, Caleb Mitchell, or Caleb Benning.
Yeah, all different teams for the most part. You got a couple on the same team, but they're spread out against the various ages and Adidas, National. For Supreme, you got the UAA team over there. Like, that's tough. I mean, like, I have a hard enough time trying to follow all the teams that we have here. I can't imagine trying to specifically follow kids in particular that are all over the place.
You're going to have a hard time not winning the most games of anybody over there that's coaching with you. They're starting to look over at Coach Padilla's team saying, hey, yeah, those guys are pretty good.
Got a pretty good group.
Yes, you do. With a decent coach. We'll be back next week. Be Prep Hoops Classic. That'll be in Minnesota. They got the Great Lakes Shootout. Now, you got a couple of Pentagon games that will be in Minnesota on the week of the 14th. As well. You'll get it all right here. He's as good as it gets in the business. He's everywhere. I just try to get in where I fit in. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm Damon Benning. This is Nebraska Prep's Postgame.
A Hurrdat Media Production.